Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the United Theory. It's a great privilege and honor to welcome Phil Brown, who everybody knows and everybody's been watching his shows beyond the pitch. He's a part of talkSPORT as well in the past and NBC Sports. Phil, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's midday in the US, and thank you so much for coming and joining us on the show, discussing everything about United with us.
Lads, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me the pleasure of being on the show and for asking me to come on. Thank you so much.
Right. We're joined with Ankit and Sudarshan as well, who are coming from the US and India respectively. So it's a mixed crowd. Everyone just sit back, relax, grab a drink. This is going to be a very interesting discussion with Phil today. So Phil, coming to you first. After the lockdown is over and football has restarted, how do you think United has come back? We've had our peaks. We've had our lows. How do you think United has performed so far?
Well, I mean, obviously the disappointment was the semi-final. Not just the fact that United lost it, but the fact that they really surrendered in that semi-final. They weren't competitive. But if you look at the restart and you look at everybody else, United are still the only unbeaten team in the league. Burnley lost their first game. So when you look at this, nobody's performed perfectly. You know, you saw Chelsea last night against Liverpool concede 5. It's very, very difficult to play a game every 3 days. Even if you've had 3 months off, it's very, very difficult to do. And naturally, you're going to have ebb and flow. So what United have looked like really since after the Villa game, and I think that was the last time also Paul Pogba played well, to tell you the truth. Not just him, but United have looked leggy, they've looked tired, they've looked lethargic. But look, what we'll get on Sunday is a very emotional reaction. If United don't qualify for the Champions League, people are going to be apoplectic. They're going to call for Solskjaer's head and all this nonsense. But if you break the season down into 2 parts, if United don't qualify for the Champions League on Sunday, it won't be because of what they've done the second half of the season. It'll be because of what they did the first half of the season. And what happened the first half of the season was entirely predictable, lads. What happened the first half of the season was a result of dreadful preparation. I mean, United were sent into a season with one creative midfielder, and even if Paul Pogba had stayed fit, you would have had to have rested him. The fact is that they were woefully unprepared. They didn't have the players to do what was being asked of them. As soon as Solskjaer got those players, United have had a consistency. Since January, they've been the best team in the league. So not just since the restart. So yes, the last couple of games have looked tired. But overall, I mean, considering part of what we saw before, I think you have to be pleased.
Right. Ankit, getting you in on the conversation, just add to what Phil said, and you can converse with Phil on what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. What Phil said was absolutely right. I mean, we should be ourselves to blame on the very first part of the season and not towards the second half of the season, because playing 2 games per week is kind of difficult. Phil, my question to you here would be, since now that the transfer market is already open, and definitely United has to look on for some few players to come into the club and make some changes, because it looks like we do have some issues with our squad and squad depth in precise. So who do you think should be our prime targets coming into next season? Do you think Jadon Sancho is going to make a cut into the team? Do you think it's going to happen? The transfer is going to go through or not?
Well, I think when you look at how United play, fundamentally they have to sign a ball-playing left-footed centre-back, because it's a massive problem for them. You see they can't play out of defence. You see when Solskjaer first came in, he played a counter-attacking style that teams soon worked out and then became very ineffective. But he had to play that way because he didn't have the players to play any other way. He didn't have the creative players to play a possession-based game. And United almost looked like a team that's been worked out again. So Solskjaer, to have that tactical diversity, needs a ball-playing left-footed centre-back. What you see with Harry Maguire is he's not a ball-playing centre-back. And so he gets unfairly criticised sometimes because you're being asked to do something that really isn't his game. Also, what you get with someone who plays on the left-hand side of defence is someone who brings the ball onto the right foot, which stops balls being put into channels for United's wide men.
Yeah.
And attacks break down, so you'll see the ball come out of defence really, really slow. And if you look at Palace, the game, they opened the scoring with one quick movement. When they moved the ball quickly, they scored. You look at the game against West Ham, once they move the ball quickly, they score. But the build-up is too slow because they don't have ball-playing centre-backs. They also have a problem in midfield where the Nemanja Matic plays a defensive holding midfielder. They sacrifice a defensive playmaker like Chelsea had with Jorginho, like United had before Michael Carrick, in place of an old-fashioned defensive midfielder because they have their attacking midfielders further up the pitch in Pogba and Fernandes. The problem with that is taking the ball out of defence for the transition is poor because Matic is not great on the ball. You saw it against Bournemouth, ball played into his feet, plays it back, Bailly gets caught, goal. You saw it against Southampton where Pogba tried to play that, get caught, goal. Right? This happens a lot, United. So these are key positions. Obviously, on the right-hand side, the problem they have with Daniel James is not great in front of a defender. So you play the ball into Daniel James's feet. When teams sit in against United, as they're starting to do, and this is why Bruno Fernandes was really, really important, because once teams sat in against United, they couldn't break them down. They didn't have the quality to cut them open. Well, they do with Fernandes. But so now it's important you have players that can play in front of defenders, not just in behind them. Daniel James doesn't have the quality to play in front of defenders, to beat players, to create opportunities.
Completely agree.
So this is where Mason Greenwood has been almost like a new signing in January for United, as well as Bruno Fernandes. That has just been as important as Bruno Fernandes has been the emergence of Mason Greenwood. So that is a position that United need to strengthen. And Jadon Sancho is very, very important. He's very skillful. He's creative. He can play in front of defenders. And you pay big money for these players. But nobody ever talks about the fee when they work out. No one talks about Virgil van Dijk's fee. No one would say it's a bad deal. It's an exceptional deal. So for me, I do think there's a certain naivety amongst United fans about how business gets done at that level. That, Borussia Dortmund asked for 100 million, just go pay it. It's not how business gets done at that level. And it's insanity to think that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
There'll be a negotiation process, and obviously lots of intrinsic variables and little details that'll have to get worked out. But at the end of the day, for me, not getting Jadon Sancho will again represent failure. And Jude Bellingham, make no mistake about it, is a loss because United need squad depth. And what they need in that squad depth is players that can do two things. That are capable of making sure the standard doesn't drop dramatically and are also similar to the players that are being brought out. When in Southampton, when they brought on two midfielders, neither of them could control possession. So they kept giving the ball away, kept putting it under pressure, and eventually they conceded. So this is what has to happen. They have to get depth. I think they need a right winger. I think they need a centre-back and probably two midfielders. They might get away with not saying another forward. But I will say this, sorry for a long answer. This is, when you go back previous seasons, this is the best this United squad has looked in terms of, okay, we now have answers in positions. Going back to under Mourinho, so many positions you didn't have answers in. Who is United's left-hand side of striker? We know. Who's the best midfield? We know. I want to see, in this last game, Paul Pogba show me why he's a £90 million footballer.
Right.
True.
Right. I completely agree with your points, Phil, and I would like to come to Sudarshan, who would be like to asking you about the inclusion of David De Gea in the team, which has been a talking point throughout this week and probably throughout the last 2 weeks. Everybody's seen him go down in terms of form. Sudarshan, please come forward and share your thoughts.
Hi, Phil.
Hi.
So, my question to you is very simple. So, David De Gea, since that World Cup, 2018 World Cup, has not been in form, and his form has dropped drastically, right? And in the meantime, we have our goalkeeper who plays for Sheffield United, Dean Henderson, who's been doing amazing. In terms of statistics, as we all know, David De Gea is a great shot stopper, right? So even in that case, Dean Henderson beats him in close range shots, one-on-ones, long range shots, and he's saved more penalties than David De Gea as well. And we've seen David De Gea committing far too many mistakes. If you go back to last season, from letting in goals in the near post to if you go to that Barcelona game, and in this season as well, the Crystal Palace game, Patrick Van Aanholt, and then the latest would be the Chelsea debacle. So, who do you think should be our number one next season? Should we still stick with David De Gea? Give him a chance, because we all know what he's capable of. 2015, 2016 De Gea, probably the best keeper I've seen in my life. So, do you think we have to still stick with David De Gea, or do you think Henderson is knocking at the door and we should give him a chance?
Well, it's a really good question. I'm trying to find my notes here on De Gea because let me first of all talk about what I spoke with Franz Hoek, who was United's goalkeeping coach, who coached De Gea and coached also Dean Henderson.
Right.
He says to me, look, playing for Manchester United and playing for Sheffield United are two very different things. But I took a long look at De Gea's career. I have some of the notes here, not all of them. And I was looking at his career at United, and I think that when you go back to, say, the Sunderland game under Moyes in the Elite Cup semi-final, United would have been Moyes' only trophy at United, and probably an important one that might have saved his job. United in the semi-final against Sunderland, they're 2-1 up with a minute to go, and he drops a blunder and lets Sunderland equalise 2 each, goes to penalties. Sunderland, he doesn't save a single penalty. Save 2 penalties, but Sunderland ended up going through. And then I looked at that and I said, okay, I have some of them here. So I looked at, for example, when he went to the World Cup with Spain. And in that World Cup, there was 7 shots on target against Spain, and he conceded 6. The 3 each against Russia, for example, he didn't save a single penalty. Then you start going through his career this season. Let me see if I got some of them right here. But away to Spurs and Everton this season, he cost United 4 points. Against Crystal Palace, Van Aanholt conceded the goal late. United lose that game 2-1. Against Watford, he drops a clanger and 2-0 defeat. In this against Chelsea in the FA Cup 2018-19 season, he makes 2 mistakes in the 3-1 defeat that cost United. Same season, he makes a mistake in the 2-2 draw at home to Arsenal. He also makes the first mistake in the Nou Camp that lets Messi score Barcelona's second goal. Then in the 2-0 defeat last season to Manchester City, he conceded a first goal against Sané, which was a mistake. 4 days later, he conceded against Chelsea another mistake with Alonso in the 1-1. This goes on and on and on, right? So what David De Gea's value was, he was an exceptional shot stopper. But I started to have concerns about De Gea as United's game evolved. We just talked about United needing a ball playing centre back, but David De Gea's feet is not great. So
exactly.
If he's not great with his feet, he pulls off some eye-catching spectacular saves throughout a game, but is now starting to make elementary mistakes that are now costing United points rather than saving them. Why should he be any different to anyone else? He's been a great goalkeeper, but when we talked about squad depth, look, what the players in the first team need to have is a fear that the guy over their shoulder is going to take their place. This is why you can't have Andreas Pereira as a legitimate squad player, because the players in United's first team, Paul Pogba doesn't feel sufficiently threatened. Paul Pogba has been poor last few weeks, but Fernandes has been poor, but he looks tired. So you need someone. You'll see this a lot with United signings, that they come in, they start great, right? And then their form dips because there's not the players behind them to pressure them to keep the standards every single week. Then they go to another club and they start playing well. Why? Because the respective football club they have has that. So you see this. So Daniel James is a perfect example. Look how well he started. Angel Di Maria, perfect example. Look how well he started. This just goes on and on and on. So, this is David De Gea doesn't feel sufficiently threatened by Sergio Romero. He should be dropped. I think he won't be dropped. Solskjaer will not do that in the last game of the winter season. But if David De Gea makes a big mistake in that game at caution at the Champions League, then they have a decision to make this summer.
And Phil, if you look at the patterns in these David De Gea mistakes, right? So against Everton game, he let in a goal, when it was in the 3rd minute, and Patrick Van Aanholt last minute, and then Chelsea game right at the end of first half, and again the second one where Mason Mount scored right at the start of the second half. He has a tendency to switch off early in the game or late in the game. Do you think that's a worry, or do you think he can improve on that front?
That's his biggest concern for me. That's probably his biggest weakness for me, is it seems to be mental. Because these are mistakes a goalkeeper shouldn't be making. And when I look at when David De Gea has been under pressure, he's never really come out of it looking exceptionally well. I mean, the Spanish media have torn him to pieces. So for me, I think David De Gea is in the prime of his career, but if De Gea didn't have the last 3-4 years, if we were judging De Gea solely in the last 2 years, that's not a Manchester United goalkeeper. And I can forgive a 6-week period of not being particularly good. I can't forgive a 24-month period of not being particularly good. And so for me, I think this season, we're talking about fine margins, right? We're talking about United need 1 point to qualify for the Champions League. And yet we could point to so many times this season where if David De Gea makes simple, elementary saves that you expect from a top-class goalkeeper or even a professional goalkeeper, then United are in. There's going to be, when United analyse the season, and you look at what we talked about the first half of the season, which was entirely avoidable, you look at a lot of the individual mistakes, this is a team that if they can cut those out next season, maybe not win the league, but certainly will be still in it with 4 or 5 games to go. These are the things that Solskjaer has to be ruthless on. And to be fair to Solskjaer, I speak to people behind the scenes at United, and he is extremely ruthless. He has to be strong on transfers this summer. He can't relent. He should have been stronger last year. But there's been so many nonsense things written. First of all, United did not tell Borussia Dortmund they'd only pay 50 million for Jadon Sancho. It's utterly absurd. And so there's a lot of things that have been written. Kingsley Coman linked with United today, but that's exactly what United should be doing. Key to any business negotiation is the other party has to fear that the other person can walk away from the table. And if they know that you can't walk away from the table, then they control negotiations. So Borussia Dortmund have to fear that United can walk away and there's alternatives, right? So That's exactly what United should be doing, and that's how business gets done. So De Gea, Dean Henderson's a very good goalkeeper. He's prone to mistakes himself. But what we don't know is how do you deal with playing for Manchester United?
Right. So
excellent
Phil,
points. Excellent points.
That's some excellent discussion. And personally, myself, even I feel that De Gea has not been on top of his game this season and the last season since the World Cup as well. I feel that he should have been dropped in the last game, but he was not. And speaking about how Solskjaer was ruthless, I think he should have just dropped De Gea and played Sergio Romero, even though De Gea had a decent game. But I think it's time that Sergio Romero, if Sergio Romero starts in the last game of the season, I wouldn't even be surprised. So coming to the last game of the season, Phil, what are your expectations? What do you want to see United do? And do you see any changes in the starting lineup? Because now we have our manager's press conference coming out, and he said that most probably Luke Shaw would be coming back in. So how do you see the last game of the season going?
Look, we're going to find a lot out about Manchester United players' temperament. It's okay beating teams when you're on an 18-20 game unbeaten run where they're not massive. There's not a lot riding on the games. Because what's going to be asked of United, I have no doubt that if United played this game a month ago against Leicester, United go into this full of confidence. Leicester are a good team, don't get me wrong. But now we're talking about how do you deal with pressure, how do you deal with, because what we've just talked about, guys, is United's biggest problem is individual mistakes, right? This is what's costing them. So can you go into this game and not make those individual mistakes under pressure? This is what we find. Look, every professional footballer has ability, right? You don't get to play at that level unless you have exceptional ability. You don't get to go to a club like Manchester United unless you have exceptional ability. But what we can't measure is the intangibles. How do you deal with pressure? And you only find that out whenever players give you the answer. And sometimes it's not the answer you want. So what we'll find out about some of these players on Sunday is, are you a Manchester United player? I'm not talking about ability. We already know you have ability. You're here. I'm talking about how do you deal with pressure and expectation. That's what makes you a Manchester United player. That's what makes you a player that can win the league. And so far, the answers to that have not been great. But if they get the result they need on Sunday and they get into the Champions League. I think that is an incredible accomplishment by Solskjaer to get United in that situation from where they were. I mean, remember, when he signed Bruno Fernandes in January, a player that should have been signed this summer and somehow got dragged out to the end of January. Don't tell me that if he hadn't been signed in the 1st of January, even United wouldn't have picked up another point somewhere. But we're talking here. So when we're looking at this, with Solskjaer, when he signed Fernandes, United were closer to the bottom 3 than what they were the top 3. So here he's put them in this incredible situation after this 20-game unbeaten run in the league. But tomorrow or Sunday is a different question. Tomorrow is not about whether you're better than Leicester. We know 1-11 United are better than Leicester. It's about if you got the balls to play for Manchester United, and we'll find out.
So what I'm saying is probably if you see that Chelsea has lost against Liverpool the other day and giving them a chance to celebrate the title with more zest. What I'm saying is now it boils down to the last game for us. It boils down to the last game for Chelsea. Why? I don't know why we are leaving it down to the last game of the season. And also Leicester will have equal or even more fire in their belly to get this through. So you never know what's going to happen with our last game.
I think one of the problems also with this game is if you look at the likes of James Maddison, Jamie Vardy, this will probably be his last chance to play in the Champions League. Right. James Maddison, pre-COVID, was probably going to leave Leicester this summer for big money. Now that's no longer the case. So now these players will be fired up to get Champions League because James Maddison, if he wants to play Champions League football next season, will probably have to get it at Leicester. Right? Because no one's going to come in and pay pre-COVID prices for him. And Leicester don't need to sell. So you've got a renewed focus. But in defence of United, like we've said, look, nobody's been perfect since this restart. It's very, very difficult. So Solskjaer has still managed to keep United unbeaten. They've dropped some poor points, don't get me wrong. But they've also shown remarkable consistency to be in this position in the first place. And he's doing this with a limited squad that he can't rotate because they don't have the depth. And when he rotates, it changes the game so much for United because they can't control possession anymore. And, typically when Solskjaer's making changes in games, United are behind, right? Or they need a goal. The problem is when you do that, the teams are sitting in deep against United and you can't bring McTominay and Fred on when you need a goal because they just don't have that creative ability. So that's the problem. This is why I think someone like a Thiago Alcantara would be really, really important for United and would be a brilliant signing.
And Phil, regarding this season, I would like to ask you one more question. So we're sitting at 63 points and we're sitting third on the table. And if we win the Leicester game, we'll be ending the season with 66 points, I think, which is the lowest for any team, from the last few years to, have 66 points and qualify for the Champions League football. So do you think Ole is just, lucky this season? Or how do you see the situation?
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. You manage games based on the situation you find yourself in. So, if you compare to previous seasons, it's very difficult to do that because maybe in previous seasons the teams at the bottom half were worse. So, therefore, it was easier for the top teams to pick up points. Right? Maybe you're more competitive balance this year. Also, teams are dropping points in games that they don't need to win, so they're to accomplish their goals. So they're picking different teams, right? So Liverpool are so far ahead at the minute. But when I say so far ahead, they're so far ahead in consistent level performance. I don't think there's that far ahead in terms of squad and everything else. And I think if they picked up a couple of injuries, things can change very, very quickly. I don't expect Liverpool to retain this level of consistency next season. I think they'll still be very, very good. Really, they've done over 2 seasons. But that's high-intensity football, and they don't have a deep squad. And they've been quite fortunate with injuries. But when you look at United's season, you break it down into 2 seasons, really. The first half of the season, pre-Fernandes, was a total disaster, unmitigated disaster. And for me, it was reflected poorly on United as a football club and how they run themselves and how just everything was atrocious. Then they sign Fernandes, they get a spark. Right? They get that player that brings a bit of confidence to the squad that they badly need. They get Pogba back. They get Mason Greenwood back. And during the COVID shutdown, the football club did do well and how it interfaced with the community and everything else. Right? So all that being said, I think that since January, it's been a much better football club. And if you judge United since January, you have to say that Solskjaer has done an exceptional job. If you judge them over the course of the season, it's again not good enough. So there's two questions to answer. When you look at United over the course of 38 games, once again, to me, the football club, the board, the administrative staff come under enormous scrutiny and criticism because they would never accept that level of ineptitude on the business side. They would never recruit that poorly on the business side. When they're recruiting somebody for the financial side, they go through a process of elimination. They go through, it's a forensic process to get the best candidate, right? Because they judge success by profit and loss. They don't do that on the football side, and they don't know how to do that on the football side. We've got people that are making football decisions that don't know football. That can't happen, right? So for me, I think that Solskjaer has a hard job, and I don't care if you're Zidane. Just like Mikel Arteta said, there's no magic to this. It's about quality players. If you don't give a manager the quality players, they're only as good as the 11 players that took the pitch. And first half of the season, they were starting a team with maybe 5-6 players that weren't even Premier League level, never mind Manchester United level. So for me, I think second half of the season has been more than acceptable. First half, unacceptable.
That's a very good discussion right there, Phil. And we would like to come back to Ankit. You can shoot your last question to Phil, and then
take your time, no problems.
Yes. So Phil, the last question from at least from my end and our end would be, how do you think we are going to go ahead next season? What will be our preparations like? And do you think with all the transfer rumors which we are going through, and with an addition of a couple of players in our squad, do you think we'll be ready to challenge for the title the coming season? Do you think we are going to have that firepower to come and give it a shot against Liverpool or City or even Chelsea for that matter in the coming season?
Yeah, well, it all depends on what they do over the summer. Like, first of all, centre-back's position, Axel Tuanzebe's 23. He's played 10 professional games of football. He's been injured far too much. Phil Jones no longer has the body physically capable of standing up to the rigours of professional sport. And that's incredibly tragic. They want to sell Chris Smalling for obvious reasons because they want to bring money to buy. So if they can buy, unfortunately, just doesn't play enough. So they have to get a centre-back. They absolutely must do that. And then they have to hope that he's quality. Because what they can't do is go out and take a gamble on somebody. I don't think Nathan Ake's good enough. I don't think you can do that if you're a top club and hope that someone turns out to be exceptional. But these players cost a lot of money. So I don't see United going out and buying a Sancho plus another 70, 80 million pound centre back. What I expect is they'll try to get Sancho. If they're successful, then maybe you'll see another defender if 3 or 4 go out. I think Paul Pogba is going to be a big indicator as to what's going to happen. If Paul Pogba signs a new contract, remember one of the biggest reasons why he was upset is he felt the promises were not kept when he signed his last contract about how United were going to invest. If he signs a new contract, I'm quite certain that those promises will have been made to Pogba again, that United plan on investing. And I would imagine they would have to come through on that. Otherwise, he is going to have some release clause in his contract. But Pogba himself has to prove he's a world-class footballer. And when you spend £90 million on a footballer, you're spending him to make the difference in games like Sunday. Not against Norwich, not against Villa away. These games, they need to be won. This is where world-class players show they're separate from the rest, because it's also about mentality. So for me, over the summer, Jadon Sancho, because United still need another forward player, in my opinion. They still need a ball-playing centre-back, which is crucial. Not just defending. Defending is done from the front to the back. Attacking is done from the back to the front. Okay, if you've got a weak link in that, it causes a problem in how if you don't have a proper defence, it causes a problem with your build-up. right? If you've got slow forwards that don't press properly, that don't press as a team, you put yourself under immense pressure. So this is really, really important. To me, the two most important players they get are a ball-playing centre-back and a wide player. But I also think they need at least, and if Thiago Alcantara is available for 25 million, not as a snip, they should go out and get him. But they need at least, for me, one other creative midfielder that they can rest Pogba Fernandes on. And if they need to bring on a substitution, that will be able, to retain their tactical shape. So those are the three that I think they have to get.
Right, Phil. Thank you so much. I just wanted to come to something that's something that's vast, and I think it's a big discussion on its own. But I just wanted to throw some light on it. I've been seeing recently that there are reports of United being back in the game for a director of football. So do you have anything to add on that?
To me, I'm not impressed by director of football. To me, I'm more, what does it actually mean? It's utterly worthless title if it's an impotent title. If, there's certain things that I'm bemused by. Apparently, there's a panel of experts that evaluate United's transfers, but nobody knows who they are. Who certifies someone else in being an expert? I mean, who walked into United's board and said, "You're an expert, you're not"? By what criteria? It makes no sense to me. It's a bit like me, Neanderthal, qualifying somebody as a particle physicist and saying, "Yeah, you're an expert in the universe." Oh, really? How do you do that? So I think if they allow a director of football, which I don't see the Glazer family seceding this type of authority, but if they allow a director of football to it has to be a managerial appointment for me, because if you're someone that comes in that usurps the manager's authority, then that's a problem. There won't be any symbiosis between the two. So I think it has to be someone that Solskjaer approves of. But one of the things that we've seen recently, lads, is United, I know they didn't get Jude Bellingham, which is a big loss, right? Don't get me wrong, that's a big loss. I had Harry Redknapp on my show about 2 weeks ago. And he said to me he'd be a £100 million footballer. Harry Redknapp gave him his debut. He said he'd be a £100 million footballer in 2 years, and he would get into United's first team now. That's a big loss. So, but what it does show is that United are now starting to target these younger players before they reach that second stage in the development where they are at peak value. So they're starting to look at that 16, 17, 18-year-old market. You see some of the recruitment they've done in the academy. That's where director of football is really, really important, right? And so I think when you look at the shift in focus, that's really, really important, because when you look at the squad, the dearth of quality in United's squad, it could really be helped by having a couple of really, really exceptional young players at 17, 18 that are capable of coming in and making being able to play at that level, because that is a big problem. So I think a director of football is something that it's all going to be about what responsibilities they give him. And that really will. That's why people wouldn't take it in the past. That's why Van der Sar wouldn't take it in the past, is because it really was an impotent role. But it's an important one.
Right. Thank you so much, Phil. I think we've taken a lot of your time. And
anytime, lads.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's an absolute honor. I mean, we cannot thank you enough for being on our show. It's great to have you. And I just wanted to tell something about your podcast that's going on. Beyond the Pitch, I saw your tweet that you're having another important guest coming on in the future in the new phase. Yeah. So all the best for it. And we will be watching, and we ask all our viewers to watch and subscribe to your channel as well.
Thank you, Les. Yeah, just give me a follow at Beyond the Pitch on Twitter or at Mark Hines. And yeah, we have people on from United all the time, ex-players, current players, and obviously people from all over the world of football. So give us check it out. It's all free. And best of luck to yourselves, lads. Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute honor and a pleasure. And wish all you lads all the best all around the world. India, America. Where's the other one? Where are you, man?
I'm in the Middle East. I'm in Dubai now, but I'm from
Dubai. Beautiful. All you lovely Indian lads, an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, boys. Take care.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is ours, Phil.
Cheers,
like, share, and subscribe to the video, and the link for Phil's channel and his YouTube and his Twitter account will be in the description. Take care, everyone. Hope you guys had a nice discussion. Till the next episode of the United Theory. Signing off. Thank you.
Thanks, boys.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, guys.